Hey guys, Chris here from Lifeline EMS Training. I wanted to go over real quick tourniquet placement 101, the down and dirty and keeping it simple. This is something people try and complicate. They try and put a bunch of different this, then that's. When a person is exsanguinating, stopping the bleed early and minimizing the loss of the precious blood in the body is the critical objective. And usually when this happens, it's not the most stress-free situation. So we want to provide you some strategies or tools to be successful if you were to come upon this or have this happen. So types of bleeding, superficial. So epidermal or the dermal layer right there where you're just getting some of the capillary beds and you're just getting kind of passive bleeding. That paper cut is superficial. Venous, you've nicked one of the vessels, low pressure circuit. It's a slow, steady flow versus arterial, which is pulsatile because it's on the pressurized side. So as the patient's pulse or left ventricle is ejecting blood out, it's squirting out. So we always make the joke, if you can count the pulse by the blood flow, it's probably arterial. Initial steps, keep it simple, right? Apply direct pressure, elevate the extremity, and if you can, apply pressure to the nearby artery, the one that's feeding it, the one proximal to the core. Keep it simple. Extremities, right? That's where we put tourniquets. There aren't cervical tourniquets as much as some of us have probably coworkers where you're like, oh man, we don't have that. Don't do that. We're talking extremities, arms and legs, right? So vein, artery, nerve bundle. They run in bundles. They're VAN, V-A-N, vein, artery, nerve bundle. The things to think with extremities are the proximal portion of the extremity has one bone, one artery, one vein. The distal portion, the part that rotates, the part that takes the load, the shock, has two bones, two arteries, two veins. So there's two in the distal portion, one in the proximal portion. So up here in the femur, the humerus, you have one, and one. It is much easier to take that circumferential pressure from the tourniquet and compress the mass of muscle up here, the biceps and triceps, here, the glutes, the quads, the biggest muscle groups in those extremities, and here, biggest muscles, strongest muscle groups in the body to compress that artery against the bone. And that's your goal, is to stop that bleeding in those areas. You'll commonly hear people say, oh, 2 finger widths or 2 finger lengths above the joint, and then place the tourniquet on. Well, I challenge you to do it proximal, isolate the extremity, shut down that area, then finish your assessment and what you need to do. Because if you, 2 fingers below, 2 fingers above, why do they tell you to do that? They tell you to do that because of the thing called a hunter's glen. So it's a valley here, and it sits right here at the distal portion of the bone just before the joints. That's where the vein, artery, nerve dives in that valley and then goes in the posterior aspect of that joint, so that every time you bend that joint, you don't occlude that blood flow to and from that extremity. So there's a hunter's glen there. There's a dip right here, a cusp. There's a little valley here, and the vessels come through here and dive down in the back portion of that joint. That's how you don't lose, sensation and blood flow every time you wave your hand or bend your knee when you're walking. And because if you were to put the tourniquet over top that hunter's glen, the vessels would be in that valley and you never occlude them. So when it hits the fan and life kicks in, we want you to be ready for those strategies. So put your tourniquets on the proximal portion of those extremities. Isolate that area, work one-on-one, one tourniquet, one artery against one bone. Make your life easy. You don't have to worry about the 2 fingers, getting a laser level out. And we're putting tourniquets on to stop arterial blood flow. We're not putting tourniquets on to put enough pressure circumferentially so that we create backup in the low pressure venous system to create venous engorgement so that we can drop an IV, draw labs. We want to lock down to and from blood flow from that extremity. These are not the tourniquets we're talking about. These do not have enough surface area and circumferential pressure to occlude the arterial blood flow. The anatomy of a tourniquet, you need a closed circumferential loop around the extremity with a windlass, and the windlass you twist, and when you twist, you tighten down that area in a circumferential fashion. So if you've ever done farm fencing or field fencing, that's exactly what is used here to tie it in. This is a Spanish windlass that's used to tie in the wire to make it tense or tight. It helps with both the posting of the fences, but also helps tighten up the barbed wire. So windlasses are used all over. Well, so we like the SAM XT tourniquet for a couple reasons. It's got nice high strength hook and loop. It's very durable, especially when it's saturated with blood. It has a sweet TrueFlex plate on the back, so it has a nice dense plate. If you can, put that towards the artery, makes life very easy. It also has a locking buckle with a clicking sound, and we'll post another video on the channel. But this locks, and then it has a metal windlass. And the metal windlass under stress when you're cranking this down is a huge win. There are a lot of knockoff cheap tourniquets on the market that you can get from any of the online stores for very cheap. And the thing about a tourniquet is when you need it to work. And maybe a couple more bucks for one that's made much more robust, has been tested. Just be cognizant of that. This is the SAM, so it has the metal windlass, has a very robust Velcro system, and it has an awesome locking buckle. If you can get the buckle to lock, you only get about 2 turns on this. If the buckle, gets caught on you, you can wrap the Velcro around still, crank it, get about 3 turns. So it has redundancy built in, which is what we really, really like. And it's very, very robust. So that's quick down and dirty on tourniquets. We hope that helped. And as always, if you have any questions, hit us up at info@lifelineemstraining.com. And we hope you have a great day.